Welcome to our first King's Talk after half-term break. As a lot of you are aware, my name is Greg Hunter. I'm the Deputy Head Co-Curricular at King's. And tonight we are really delighted to welcome back Miriam Lwanga, back 25 years after she was the first female school captain. And she'll be interviewed by a really good and close friend and fellow OKS and current teacher of the school, Alana Fraser. We'll hear about her time at King's, through to university, and what has led her to be working for UNICEF in Uganda. After the interview has taken place, there'll also be a chance for you as the audience to ask questions. Please, at any time throughout this presentation and throughout the question and answer with both Alana and Miriam, please feel free to type your questions into the Q&A function as part of Zoom at any time. Or alternatively, once the questions are started, you can put your virtual hand up and we can put you on the air to ask your question directly yourself. Just before I pass over to Alana and Miriam, you know, I got shared a couple of great photos just earlier today, and I'm sure Miriam's really pleased that I'm sharing these. And this is one with her hockey team, as you can see there, which is absolutely fabulous, and one that she's incredibly embarrassed that I share. But it really does look like Miriam has only left literally just in the summer. I'll just quickly share that final one. That is that one. And what an absolutely fabulous, fabulous picture of Miriam. And as you'll see when you're about to see her in a moment, you'd think it was just yesterday. So look, I'll pass over to Alana and Miriam. Alana, over to you, and really enjoy the talk. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hunter. That's really kind. Welcome back to King's, Miriam. I think that it looks to me like you about the lost fountain of youth and how you actually managed to stay looking so young. I'm not sure that Miriam and I have known each other since I think we were 4 and 6 respectively when we started at juniors. So welcome back. It's 30 years since you started at King's, which is an incredibly important, I think, anniversary, just because that was the start of full co-education at King's. And it's also 25 years this year since you became captain of school. So we thought it would be a great opportunity for you to come back, even though you are actually in Uganda at the moment, obviously. And as you just haven't been back to the UK for years, but it's great to have you back, and welcome back to King's. So my first question really, it struck me when I was thinking about the theme of this talk, which was about from King's to UNICEF in Uganda, that your whole career, including your career at King's, right from start to finish, has really been about giving girls and women more rights. Is that something you've consciously sort of gone towards, or is it just a quirk that so many of your paths have come in that direction?
I think it's just purely coincidental. I'm not going to take credit for saying that I'm here fighting for women's rights. I think it's the way I was brought up. No one ever really told me that being a girl was a problem. So I think when you grow up knowing that you're just you, then you get on with it. So nothing really struck me as odd that I'm a girl and it was going to stop me from doing whatever I wanted to do. And I guess therefore in my attitude and the way I do things, I assume that I'll be able to do it whether I'm a girl or a boy. It was never an issue. But I think maybe in the process, I perhaps picked up on the fact that I would support others or, you know, champion women's rights, but not from a standing on my soapbox shouting about it, but living my everyday life that way.
Okay,
much, yeah.
Thank you very much. Yeah. So starting at the beginning, when you came to King's as a fresh-faced, still fresh-faced now, but fresh-faced.
Thank you.
In 1990. That was the first year of full co-education. Obviously, there had been girls in sixth form at King's before that, but you were the first shells. Did you get a warm welcome?
I mean, I don't remember it being particularly hostile. I think we were so overwhelmed by everything, all the attention and everything that was going on. I do remember it being super daunting walking into the dining room on day one for breakfast and sort of having this entire mass of boys staring at us like we came from Pluto or Mars or something like that. But generally, I mean, the boys and I think most of them had been in co-ed schools anyway, so it wasn't a big deal for them. There might have been some rumblings and grumblings, especially because we happened to kick some boys out of their house. So I don't think they were particularly pleased. But on the whole, I don't really recall I don't recall any major hostility, but I see on the list of attendees, there's some people who are in my year, so maybe they will have some insights. But I'm pretty sure that it was fairly smooth sailing when we got there. I was not aware of any major hostilities, that's for sure.
So, of course, at that time, Walpole was a boys' house.
Yes,
so
it was. Yeah.
First year of girls in Walpole, and the next year was the first year of girls in Luxmore, which seems so strange now, I'm sure, to our current pupils who just see themselves as Walpole girls or Luxmore girls or German
girls. Yeah.
Yeah. So the Walpole boys actually, or previous Walpole boys from Remove upwards, did you ever feel that they were unhappy to be displaced?
I'm sure. I mean, there might have been a few who weren't too happy about it, but I like to think that they love the benefits of having girls in school.
There are indeed many. We don't need
many,
to go
right?
Anyway.
We don't have to, no. That's for another day.
What was your favorite memory of King's at school?
Good God. You're asking me just something like 25, 30 years ago. I mean, that's impossible, Alana. I mean, there's so many. There are so many. I mean, obviously, for me, the number one thing about Kings are the friendships I made. I mean, like we were just discussing with Mr. Hunter before this, is just, you don't talk to someone for maybe like 5-10 years, but when you pick up the phone or when you send an email or when you just have a quick WhatsApp video call, it's like you saw the person yesterday, isn't it? So I think for me, the friendships that I made are truly friendships for life. And so that's probably what I value the most from there. And then, I mean, the privilege that comes with going to a school like King's, I can't put it into, it's difficult, it's not tangible. It's not something, like picking up the stapler or something, but going to a school like King's has opened doors. It's made things happen for me that possibly wouldn't if I hadn't gone to this particular school. There is a privilege that goes with going to a school like King's, and I never took it for granted. But definitely my biggest memory is the friendships I made. I'm not going to get into the details of shenanigans we got into because that's not necessary. And I'm pretty sure there are a lot of people who wouldn't want me to. So I'll put it down to the friendships, really, yeah.
Okay. If we flash forward, you obviously reached the top echelons of the school. First captain of school. Am I right in thinking that you were also head girl at our prep school as well?
Why would you bring this up? Yes.
Miriam is indeed one of those people who is one of life's natural leaders, let's just say. I remember the attention that attracted. Did it how much there was in you being captain of school?
Sorry, could you say that again, Alana? I lost you there for a second.
Sorry. So I remember when you did you see how much interest there was in you?
I mean, if you're asking me about the press attention around that, is that what you're asking me? I found it a bit strange. It was a bit odd. I mean, I felt like people were a lot more excited about it than I was. I don't know. I was just, okay. I understood the big deal, fine, first girl, but after a while, I was like, I'm not really understanding what the fuss is about, I'm trying to imagine, like, I'm family members and my parents and people are opening up the Times, and there I am with like a half page and my picture in it. And I'm sitting there going, all I did was someone appointed me. I mean, it's not even like I was voted. It's not like and I sort of felt like there are probably a few more important things that are going on this world that perhaps ought to be on this page. I mean, don't get me wrong. I enjoyed it for what it is, but I didn't get carried away. It's just, it was a bit strange, though, just a bit. But it comes with the territory, I guess.
To represent the girls and also represent people.
Oh gosh, sorry, Alana. Sorry to interrupt you, but there's something going on with your sound. I don't know if it's me. You're sort of cutting in and out with your sound. I don't know if it's me.
Sorry, I can't see anything wrong with my sound. But
okay, there we go. That's better now. Yeah.
Okay, so the question I asked was, when you were appointed, did you think it was important in that year of being sort of like at the top of the leadership, the pupil leadership, to represent both girls and, of course, people of colour?
I mean, I think the conversation around people of colour, I mean, let's face it, in my year, I was the only Black girl, and there were only 3 other Black guys. So that's Dunstan, Alex Ogadegbe, and Femi. So, I mean, if we're going to talk about at our time in terms of people of color in school, I mean, it wasn't really something that we talked about because it wasn't a factor. The issues that are being played out today, not saying that they didn't matter at the time, but I guess they just weren't relevant to us. I mean, we're sitting in Canterbury in extreme privilege, and it didn't really, that world wasn't coming to mind. Was I aware? Of course, I was aware that I'm a person of color. I'm aware of what it means. And I knew that I had a responsibility to do it right, because I'm representing not just girls, but I'm representing my country, Uganda. I'm representing my parents, my family, my history. So I knew that I had to do the job right and behave in a certain way. So I'm aware of that, and I'm aware how I should comport myself, so to speak. But in terms of the bigger picture of issues that we see at the moment around Black Lives Matter, around institutional racism, things like that, I mean, I would probably say that perhaps they're more relevant now. I'm not sure what the ratio is now. I like to think that it's improved at King's in terms of integration, possibly access to this kind of education for people who are not white. I'm not sure about those details, but at the time it really didn't factor in. I mean, I'll say also from my point of view, I never experienced any racism from anybody in school. I never had that problem. I wouldn't know about the other colleagues, other people in my year, but I certainly never had any issues with anybody on that issue. Actually, the only time that I got anything remotely offensive is when I was asked when I got a couple of letters from the BNP. So the British, someone actually sat down and wrote some letters, and I remember Mrs. Pickering just be like, oh, these idiots, forget about it, and that's exactly what I did, writ the nonsense up, and that was that. But other than that, no, I mean, just got on with it, isn't it? You just got on with it.
Okay. Well, it's fantastic. In fact, one of the people I was talking to today described you as an awesome captain of school and said that you were not and very approachable. And they actually wanted to know what you thought your legacy was, or how you had carried through the values you had when you were at school into your work life, which will kind of segue into where you are now, I guess.
I mean, the values from school are the values I came from home with. So, it's the way I was raised. It's my heritage. It's how my parents taught me to be who I am: respectful, hardworking, not too serious all the time, have some fun, but that things matter. Be aware of what's going on around you. Be self-aware. So I would say that those values. I mean, let's put it this way. I pretty much think I'm the same person I am now that I was then when it comes to my values, the way I carry myself, and the way I'd like to treat people, and I like people to treat me. So I think those values just carried themselves through from my home to school to uni, and then to the way I work. I think maybe I'm just more mature about it, but the essence of my values are still the same.
See, this is why you're a good captain of school, Miriam. This is why you're. So if you go forward again, I'm conscious that I don't want to spend too much time talking when there are other people who may well have some really great questions for you. You now work for UNICEF.
Yes.
As a communication for development specialist.
Yes, I do.
Could you tell us a little bit about UNICEF's work? What kind of operations, and what's its mission?
Okay. Sure. Actually, I forgot to say this at the beginning, but I must put a disclaimer that any opinion at this moment has nothing to do with where I work. It does not reflect the values of UNICEF, etc., etc. Now we've got that out of the way.
Yep.
Let's see. So, funny enough, I never thought I'd work for the UN. I have a background. Both my parents worked for UN agencies, and I'm quite amused by the fact that I've ended up working in a UN agency. So UNICEF, for those who don't know, is the United Nations Children's Fund. And we basically support development and humanitarian issues around women and children. And so in Uganda, my job is communication for development. So which essentially means I support the programs. So there are 3 programs: child survival and development, child protection, and education. And my job is to support those programs to deliver information, messaging, and what we call sort of behavior change communication, social behavior change around those issues. So it's not communication, PR, external relations, which is done by my comms colleagues, but I'm C4D, communication for development. So it means I get to sort of put together programs with my colleagues that are communicating practices and behaviors that we want to see people take on to improve their lives, improve their children's lives, and improve their well-being generally, and hope that they will be able to succeed and lead the lives that they want to fulfill, lead. Yeah, essentially, in a nutshell.
Okay, sometimes development and charity are conflated a bit, and I think you're very keen not to do that. What's the difference between charity and development?
I mean, generally, my problem with the word charity, and it suggests like a lack of agency. Yeah, it suggests that the people who you're working for don't have things that they want to achieve in life, and that they don't know how to go about it. So for me, charity suggests that I come in with my nice little package and I'm going to deliver this to you, and it's going to make your life better. You just follow this package. What we're trying to move away from is that idea where we're trying to go into communities and say, okay, let's work together to see what the issues are. How do you think we can solve these issues? And how can we support you to solve those issues? That's the kind of move we're trying to get. We're trying to move away. So that's why for me, when initially the heading was charity, I was a bit uncomfortable because these are people living their lives. You and I, the way we live our lives, we wouldn't welcome someone just coming in and saying, hey, guess what, you shouldn't do it like this, you should do it like this. We all have ways of doing things. We need to be respectful of the way people do things. And we need to approach it in a way so that people live with dignity and that they're able to make decisions and own those decisions and support themselves. So for me, that's why I'm not comfortable with the word charity. But this is just semantics. At the end of the day, that's my philosophy in the work I'm doing anyway.
You mentioned supporting them with the particular issues that they have. Could you tell us, for those who aren't as familiar with sort of Uganda, obviously has a really interesting history going back to obviously the days that some of us will remember Idi Amin, and then
there it is.
the HIV crisis, its LGBT record. What are the kinds of issues that people are either rural or urban Ugandans are experiencing that you would be dealing with?
I mean, the problems, okay, from my perspective, the problems that I'm focused on are mostly health issues, health-related issues. So we're talking about, mothers giving birth safely, nutrition issues, immunization, HIV/AIDS prevention. That's my big focus, is health, really. Access to water, sanitation, menstrual hygiene for young girls is a big issue for us. Child marriage is another issue. Some parts of the country, not that many, but where they happen, it's 100% female genital mutilation and cutting. These are some of the big issues that we deal with. So for us, depending on the issue, it requires a different approach. If you're going to be talking about issues around child marriage, early marriage, teenage pregnancy, issues of complex family dynamics, you're trying to understand cultures. I didn't grow up in Uganda, so when I came back to Uganda, it was almost like having to relearn how to be Ugandan, so to speak. And even that is not one homogenous thing. Being a Ugandan means very many different things depending where you come from. So I'm going to places in the country that I don't know anything about this person's culture, and I have to go in respectfully and just listen and learn. Whilst I might have very personal views that I find some of the practices abhorrent, it's not for me to come in and say, you can't do that, that's unacceptable, you're a terrible person. It doesn't work that way. You've got to go in with respect. These people they've had their cultures and their practices for centuries. So you can't just come in and think that you're the one who's going to, but what we can do is start a dialogue and start to discuss the issues that are around these practices. What happens when we allow young girls, when young girls are forced to get married at a young age? They get pregnant, they die in childbirth because they're too young to give birth. They don't finish school. When they don't finish school, they're not able to take care of themselves. Therefore, when they have children, the cycle continues. You can see what I'm saying, yeah? So we need to go in and we need to, when we go in, the discussion is, what vision do you have for your child? You as a parent, every parent wants their child to succeed, right? So we start that conversation. What do you think is success for your child? And how do you think you can achieve it? So if most parents in Uganda, education is absolute must. It's an absolute must. Most parents in Uganda, that's the number one thing. There's no two ways about it. School must be seen, you must finish school, and you must go on to do something. We take it very seriously. So when you tackle issues from a position of where people understand each other, it makes it easier to then go in and tackle some of these issues that we have. But yeah, the program is vast. It's a lot of work. There are many issues. You can't tackle everything at once, but you chip away and you keep on going, and you hope that one day you work yourself out of a job, because that's the way I see my work at UNICEF is, one day I hope I'm jobless. That's the ideal, that they don't need my expertise in what I do anymore. Yeah.
So I was going to ask you, actually, that's a question that you've preempted there. When you look back, if you look back 30, 40 years time, what does success look like for you in terms of where Uganda is at that point?
Let's see, I'm hoping for a thriving democracy, with strong institutions that are accountable, that function the way those institutions should work. I'm hoping to see a young population. You know, we have one of the biggest under 18 populations in the world, right? Our population, actually 75% of Uganda, I believe, is under 35. I have to look at my stats again, but something like that. That's massive. This youth bulge that we have can't be ignored. And I'd like to see that in 30, 40 years, that youth group has evolved into something successful that can help our country push through to what we love to call middle income status, whatever that means. But we fulfill other indices, not just about wealth, but I like these other indices of where we see things like Scandinavian countries are the happiest in the world and the most fulfilled. I'd like to see those kind of indices coming through for not just Uganda, but for a lot more African countries, beyond wealth index, beyond health, beyond maternal mortality, beyond, you know, numbers that talk about the people and who they are. Yeah, I'd like to see a lot more indices that are moving up in that area. So I guess that's yeah. That's
absolutely incredible to hear this, and I'm really hoping that there are some questions, because I know that I need to shut up soon and take. I'm really hoping there are some more questions on this area.
You're asking some excellent questions, though, so keep going.
The other question I was going to ask you actually is that you are also working with female entrepreneurs. What are the barriers in Uganda for female entrepreneurs to innovate, to create businesses?
Access to funds, access to microfinance, access to seed money, I think. And it's not just women, it's young people as well, actually. But yes, predominantly women because of the way these things are set up. But access to funding, and also someone to just, I guess, nurture, bounce off ideas, sort of like that, what we call that incubator style place where you can, that kind of thing, where you can come with an idea and sit with somebody who might not necessarily be in that business, but can listen to your idea and give you advice and try and direct you and give you some insights into how they may or may not see something. But I'd say access to seed funding would be the main thing. So yeah, I mean, it's interesting enough, actually, when I first came back to Uganda, I didn't start with UNICEF straight away. It took some time before I got my job with UNICEF. So actually what happened is three other friends of mine, myself, started a home shopping service called Easy Shop.
Okay.
And the seed money came from my dad, so I appreciate it. Yes, I paid him back. If anyone has any questions to ask, but
Were you Ugandan Amazon? Is that what you're saying here?
Yeah. So I said again, what?
Were you the Ugandan Amazon? Is this what?
Yeah, basically, we were trying to be the Ugandan Amazon. We were just a little bit ahead of our time because right at that time, the technology hadn't quite caught up, so we were very sort of manual about what we did. So a lot of time consuming. But what I really learned from that process is that there are so many people with incredible ideas and things that they're trying to do. There's no one just sitting around waiting for something to happen, but we were trying to make things happen while we were all trying to look for jobs. And now we all have jobs, but at the time we didn't. And this was something, that we thought about, like, listen, so many people we know don't have time to shop, why don't we shop for them? And, we went on, I think we did it for like 2 years, actually, if I'm not mistaken.
Wow.
But now the people who are doing it now, some people have shopping services now, obviously online it's grown, did seek us out and asked for some advice and suggestions, whether someone actually wanted to buy Easy Shop from us, but we're like, no, we're not selling that. But yeah, I've had a taste of what it's like to be a female entrepreneur, but then there are other avenues, like you mentioned. Should I talk about that, or you want to?
I'd just be fascinated, in terms of the success stories that you have sort of encountered through your support and nurturing of some of the entrepreneurs that you've worked with.
I mean, some of them, they're really diverse. Some of them are like gifts and wraps companies. So companies that go around doing gifts and wraps. A friend of ours came up with this idea of like, why don't we do hampers, gifts and wraps during Christmas time, Easter time, any kind of events. And actually, she was one of the first people doing it. Now everybody does it around Christmas time, Easter, everybody. So that was one of the things. Now I have a friend who's looking into doing organic baby food. As you can imagine, for us in Uganda, growing food we're so blessed with the kind of temperature, climate, soil that we have. Growing food, I could throw seeds in my garden tomorrow and, you know, a mango tree will pop up in 6. I mean, it's ridiculous. We are so blessed with the way we can grow things. So she is looking to organic baby food and also branching into sort of like developing our traditional nursery rhyme storybooks, our traditional stories that we were told as children, but now bringing them for the next generation, and also putting those into, you know, writing them down, because most of us were told these stories verbally, right, orally, but now putting these in books. And so that's another idea. Another one is another group of young people, friends of mine, are starting online TV content. So we're supporting a sort of a talk show that they're doing called Tutule, which means let's sit and we discuss. So they've just wrapped up their first season of 4 episodes, looking to do 8 more episodes for season 2. Who else? Another friend of mine is doing kids' clothing lines, so supporting that as well. Yeah, it's just that the opportunities are endless, and there's so much creativity and so many different ideas. So I figured, like, I've come from a place of great privilege and people believed in me and things have happened to me. So I just feel like it's my responsibility, where I find an idea that resonates with me, why can't I try and support this and see where it goes?
And again, presumably that's all about development. It's not about charity, giving people just, you know, as you're still trying to give them the autonomy to do it for themselves.
Absolutely. I mean, it's not me imposing anything on anyone. I mean, even it's not even really linked to my UNICEF. I mean, I guess it sort of is, but this is really just people with great ideas trying to do something great. And who knows, this person, my friend who's doing the baby food, she could be the next Gerber of Africa, you know, or I don't know. She could, you know, my friend who's doing a clothing line could be the next, you know, I don't know, baby, I forget the baby, mother and what's it, mother, I forget the mother and baby store.
Mama, baby, anyway. Those kind of things. Is that what it's
exactly.
Yeah.
Could be the next she could be the next Jacadi. I don't know. It could be any, you know, any of these.
Yeah.
So it's just about, you know, getting stuck in and seeing. I mean, it's a great time to be involved in these things, and why not? Why not?
That's a great place, I think, for us to finish our direct conversation. And now I'd really like to put this open to the floor. I can see that there's 102 attendees at this talk, which is fantastic. I know that there are some fifth form geographers here. So if you have questions for Miriam about specifically about the kind of geography that you're doing, development, that kind of thing, then please do ask a question. You can either do that by typing into the chat, and I can see there's a couple already in the chat, which I will ask you in a second, Miriam, or you can hand up if you'd like to actually ask Miriam your question directly. Please do use the hand up function as well if you'd like to. So let me just go to the questions and see what we've got here. We have something from Simon Peachy here, who was in my...
Who was it? Okay, hi Simon. Oh my goodness.
I remember you joining both at Prep School at 8. It's fantastic to see you now. That's in capitals, by the way. Brings back... I can confirm you were as big an inspiration for boys as girls, and from my perspective, a big part of natural authenticity and profound kindness. My question follows your mention of wanting to see Uganda as a thriving democracy. It is obviously, sorry, it's the politics question, I think. Here.
No, go ahead. It's all right. I knew it was coming. That's why I had to do the disclaimer. That's why I had to do the disclaimer beforehand, yeah.
It's obviously had the same president for over 30 years, which some say brings stability. Is that a prerequisite or a hindrance for the future you want to see, brackets, sorry if too controversial, but we love a...
Mr. Peachy, you had to go there. I thought I'd get an easy one to start off with. You know, I mean, we've had, so yes, we've had the same president for 30 something years. Some people would say that represents stability, steady progress. You know, that's, you know, we haven't had any chaos, so to speak, as in toppling of governments, overthrowing. We've had steady, you know, progress for 30 something years. Obviously, when if we were to compare Uganda to other democracies in the world, one does have questions about whether really does he still have his finger on the pulse for his country? Is he perhaps a bit tired and would like to perhaps hand over? I mean, Simon, my personal philosophy is that I'm more interested in the space that allows other views to be heard in a peaceful and cohesive manner that gives the space for other views. And some might say in Uganda right now, we're challenged by that. We don't seem to have that space. And so that for me would suggest that we might be challenged moving forward as a democracy and with stable institutions. But I think that we have a judiciary that's pretty independent and is working hard to do some sorts of checks and balances. But I say at the moment, this is probably going to be, we have an election next year in January, February. And I think it's going to be, not a tipping point as such, but I think it's going to be a real test of where we are right now, because we have a young man called Bobby Wine, who's about 30 years old, 35 years old, who's the youth vote and young people stirred up. So it remains to be seen. I'll answer that question properly again after the election, Simon.
I'm going to make a little, there's a non-question here, which is from somebody that you will know very well, I believe, Mrs. Pickering, which says, not a question.
God, she's still online. Oh my God, Mrs. Pickering, hi.
Just an expression of great pride in you, Miriam. That's what it says, which is.
Oh my God, that's brilliant. You're going to make me cry. This is brilliant. Oh my God, I'm so happy.
We'll get on to some questions from our current pupils then, who've got some great questions for you, actually. So one from Jack Pelling.
Okay.
Your and UNICEF, what is the level of Uganda's development compared to surrounding countries like Kenya? Which is a great question.
Wow. Okay. Well, it's like comparing oranges and apples. You know, Kenya is probably the population of Kenya compared to Uganda, the size of Kenya compared to Uganda. I'd have to look at my UNDP indices, which I haven't pulled out, unfortunately, Jack. But I would say you'd have to go sector by sector. I think it would be very difficult to just look at it, just one country next to each other. I mean, Uganda's 40 million people. Kenya must be about, what, 80 million, maybe, double our size, if not, maybe around there. Even the size of the country is maybe 3 times the size of our country. Kenya has probably a larger middle class. So I would say that they're probably, in most indices, Kenya is probably ahead of us. We have, it probably might be better to compare us to a country that's probably similar to us is Rwanda. So, but Rwanda is also, has its own, how should I put it, its own indices as well. I think the main things, you probably have to go sector by sector. Maybe if you look at tourism, Kenya definitely is far more developed than Uganda in tourism. If you look at agriculture, you probably might find that Uganda isn't doing too badly. If you look at indices for like politics, judiciary, things like that, I think we both have our challenges, but also our strengths. We're in East African Union, Kenya, Rwanda, Tanzania, Burundi, Uganda. So we're really trying to forge that East African, sort of like the EU of Africa, if you want. We're trying to forge towards that. So I think the idea is looking more how we integrate and look at intra EAC trade, how we integrate our borders, security, those kind of things. That's probably more the push these days, I think. I hope that answers your question, Jack. Apologies. I'm not a politician. I'm not an expert in development or economics, but I can give you my perspective of the person who's living in Uganda, basically.
I have to say that Mr. Hunter suggested that I had a few spare questions up my sleeve in case there weren't many from the floor here, and it's going up to 15 plus a hand up. So we're going to powering through these. I'm going to go to one more from our current captain of school, actually, who is Daisy Rex, another female captain.
Nice.
If after that we could go to the hand up, which is again somebody.
Is that Kirsten?
Recognised, no. Kirsten Gamer, yeah.
Oh gosh.
Daisy Rex. Africa receives billions of dollars of aid each year. What is your experience with the effectiveness of aid on development, and do you think it can install a culture of dependency?
I mean, it absolutely has, Daisy. I'm not lying. And I'm part of the system that does this sometimes, isn't it? I was talking about how we are trying to move away from that lack of agency and coming in with the hand that, feeds people, so to speak. I agree with you. I think also it leads to a lot of corruption. I've said it. I promise you that these are my views and my views alone. Yeah, but I think it does also lead to a lot of corruption. That those funds don't always reach where they need to go. We know that. I think there's a lot of systems in place to perpetuate UNICEF. So some would say I'm part of the problem. My salary is paid by Gavi, for instance, the Global Vaccine Alliance, right? So many people have views on that. But I I mean, all I can do is do what my values have brought me to do and why I came to this agency. And I can't control factors around aid, but what I can control is how I get the chance to use that aid for the things that I think should push our country forward, push our people forward, and lead us to the thriving country that I think we have the potential to be. But I agree with you. Yes, it is a challenge. And you know, there's lots of reasons as to why this money still flows in. It's reducing, definitely. I can say that. The money that we used to get 10 years ago in UNICEF is nothing like the funding we're getting now. And certainly in COVID, a lot of countries are now looking towards their own systems and their own problems, right? So for instance, I'll give you an example that we had some funding taken away from us from DFID, for instance, because they want to rechannel that money to the UK, which makes sense. So a lot of countries are looking at us and saying, hey, you know what, guys, we've been giving you money for the last 50, 60 years. You need to get on with it. You guys, and we collect taxes, we have systems, we have budgets. So it's about also building those systems, government accountability, getting the government to invest in the things that we think will push our country forward. So in the economy, it's education, it's health, the same issues we have in other parts of the world. You know, education is always underfunded, health is always underfunded, military is always overfunded. You know, the same problems that we always see. So it goes to us as well, yeah.
Great, thank you very much. So let's go to one of the hands up now, and we're going to Kirsten Gamer, who I know is 90s pro.
Okay. Kirsten, carefully, Kirsten.
Miriam, don't worry. I am not going to ask you anything about what you got up to at school. It's just super exciting to see you. You're absolutely right that it's when you see old friends from school, it makes it feel like I saw you just, you know, a few weeks ago, a few months ago. We're not talking years and years.
I know, right? It's crazy. Yeah, absolutely. I'm with you on that one for sure. It's so nice to hear your voice. It's brilliant.
Well, listen, we'll find a way of catching up outside of this. But I just wanted
to do a
to
separate
ask,
catch up. Yeah.
I wanted to ask you. You described that you didn't grow up in Uganda. You were a European and kind of living between Switzerland and the UK when I knew you. So how did it feel when you made the move back to Uganda?
Actually, incredibly enough, I mean, okay, I didn't live here, but I used to come back home, if not once a year, once every 2 years. You know, we have what we call home leave, and my dad would, you know, pack me up with my mom, and then we come home and see the family. So I never lost touch with Uganda specifically. But then I don't know, I think around the age of like 15, 16, I started to feel a specific affinity with coming back to Uganda. Something inside me was like stirring. Sorry about the cliche, but I just suddenly felt like, oh my gosh, I mean, why wouldn't I be home? And because I had friends and family back here who were sort of around the same age as me, who I'd gone to school with in Kenya, but also I'd also come back to Uganda, I was just thinking like, maybe this is my time to just come home and see what it's like. Because after all, if it didn't work out, I'm one of the lucky ones who had the option to go back. I could go back to England, or I could go back to Switzerland, or I could go anywhere. You know, I've been lucky to have traveled to many places. So I didn't feel that I thought I could just give it a try. And, you know, I think my mum was a bit hesitant. I think she thought I would last a year. I think she was a bit skeptical. She's like, yeah, go ahead, check it out. But but the minute I got here, first of all, I think also what helped is I got a job literally almost instantly when I got here. And as soon as I got a job, getting into the swing of things, I was in advertising. And then I'm catching up with old friends who I went to school in Kenya before I went to school at Dover College. I'm catching up with my cousins, family members. Then I'm getting this whole professional life. And all of a sudden I'm like, wow, well, actually, this is pretty cool. I kind of think I want to stay here. And with that young professional life was just developing in Uganda. It was just coming to the fore. We were sort of that generation that were coming out and getting these jobs in advertising and banking and telcos. The market was opening up. So it was a really exciting time for us. So I think, yeah, I was undaunted really. It turned out to be very easy actually. And then, I mean, of course my heartstrings, because England will always have a special place in my heart. You know, I support the rugby team and the football team, and much to the dismay of my Ugandan. But if England and Uganda play each other in the World Cup, let's not mistake. Uganda is who I'm supporting.
Oh, come on.
Very clear. But I've got my England shirts. England has always got a special place in my heart because it's where I grew up, and it's my formative years, and it's where I have most of my friends and But yeah, so moving back to Uganda didn't turn out to be as difficult as I thought it would be. I was actually quite lucky.
Brilliant.
Thank you very much, Kirsten, indeed, for your question. I think that kind of answers Catherine Garnham's first question, which is actually Catherine Van Berkel in your...
gosh!
But
no.
there's a really important question here, which is that her daughter wants to know if you're wearing earrings or are they part of your headphones?
Oh, no, these are, these are earrings.
Okay, there we go. We've also got a question from Mr. Sanderson, who is the current headmaster of Galpins, and he was the head of geography. So he has a question which is from the Galpins fifth form geographers. What is the current situation of education in Uganda? Do all children go to school, and to what age? And how do you and UNICEF hope to further education development in Uganda?
Wow, I knew I was going to get given that education question. Okay, so right now we have a system called PLE, which is, sorry, not PLE, UP, which is Universal Primary Education. So I can't remember exactly when UP was launched, but the idea was that to provide access to every child in Uganda to go to school. So in theory, every child in Uganda can go to school who can get to a school. The challenge we're seeing with universal primary education and universal secondary education is the quality of that education. If you are 200 plus people in a classroom, how can you expect a 6 or 7 year old to understand or pick up on anything or even get the quality time one-on-one and those are government schools. So you'll find that most parents still try if they can afford it, push for private schools, yes, because of course the classrooms are more manageable, the quality of education is better, the systems are better. You don't have to do the Ugandan curriculum. You can do Oxbridge, you can do international baccalaureate, you can do the American system. But for the average local Ugandan kid, it is a struggle. I think there are some excellent examples of where UNICEF is coming in to support the government on curriculum, on training materials, on training teachers, supporting primary teacher colleges, on working on the quality of the education. I know we're having an overhaul of the curriculum right now because it was considered rather antiquated. I don't think it had been upgraded for a while, possibly since colonial times, but don't trust me on that one. So I would say there are many challenges ahead. We have lots of excellent people working hard to try and make that difference, especially on the issue of quality of education. But still too many of our kids are not, if they're making it to school, they're not staying in school. We're seeing high dropout rates. So we see a registration for school, but the dropout rates are quite significant as well. So we need to look into the issues that are causing children to drop out. So for us, specifically for UNICEF, we're looking at issues of menstrual hygiene. That's a major factor for girls dropping out. They don't have anywhere to deal with their menstrual issues. There's no private bathrooms, no, there are no toilets or latrines for girls and boys separately. They don't have access to water. So then even classrooms, some places the classroom, I hate to say it, some places it's under a tree. It's a tarpaulin. We see all sorts of things, but dedicated. But we also have the challenge of teachers not being paid well. Sometimes their salaries are not paid for months, yet you expect this teacher to show up. So we have systemic structural issues, we have quality education issues, but we also have to look at how we can make the classroom more inclusive, how we can persuade parents to let more girls go to school and not look at them as a prize for early marriage. How should I say, cultural issues, depending on where you are in the country. You'll find that statistics around education vary depending on which part of the country you come from. You'll have more success if you come from one part of the country than if you do from another. So those kind of indices, that kind of inequality is exactly what UNICEF looks into with partners like Save the Children, World Vision, working with government, working with major agencies and donors like USAID, the Scandinavian donors, DFID is another big donor, the Japanese, the Koreans, etc. Yeah. I hope
Thank
that
you very
answers the
much.
question.
And thank you for that question, the Galpins geographers. One from Hector Lemon here, which I think is a question that probably at the moment, I'm sure you'll be asked a lot. Did your job get massively affected by COVID? Apart from the fact you're
ridiculously affected. Yeah, of course, massively. My work is in the community work. It's implementation at community level. It's getting out of the office type work. And so as soon as COVID struck, we had to get creative as to how we were going to now do our community engagement work, which is a big piece of the work that we do our work with districts. So our structures are at national level, then we go down to district, then we go down to sub-county, parish, and village. So our smallest sort of like unit is the village level. So all our community engagement is around district and then all those levels below. As soon as COVID struck, of course, now travel bans, you can't go to the field. People are afraid. The people you normally work with don't want to go because they're not understanding what this virus is all about. Will I get infected? Will I fall sick? So we've had to get super creative about the way we do things. A lot of like, suddenly we're buying phones and laptops and connecting people and data and trainings on how to get on Zoom and more trainings on how to unmute yourself on Zoom and more trainings on saying, can you hear me? Can you hear me? So we've had to get really creative. Then we've got a lot of innovations of trying to get sort of like collect data through mobile phone systems, you know, just trying to make people's work easier and safer. Because of course, number one, safety is our priority. We don't want to put any partners or anybody at risk. And so it's been a major challenge for us. But having said that, our country is opening up, which is the complete opposite to you. We're opening up pretty much. We're seeing ourselves around 14,500 cases, confirmed cases, and about 130 something deaths. So in comparison to other countries, you could say that we are doing okay, but we are now going up. We're beginning to get to our peak, and community transmission is quite high. So we are having to sort of do like a hybrid model of the work that we need to do. We have colleagues who work in the field, and they sort of give us a lot of feedback on how we should and shouldn't be doing things. And but yes, it has challenged us, but it's actually, I can't believe I'm saying this because it sounds wrong, but it's sort of been a blessing because it's sort of zapped us out of our regular way of working. And we had to think. We've had to sit and think and rearrange and retask ourselves with how we're going to deliver our program. Because at the end of the day, when the year end comes and I have to do my reports, I can't go to DFID and say, well, you see what happened was COVID came. So I couldn't, you know, I wasn't able to do this, and this, or, you know, accountability to the government of, I have a program that I signed with the government of Uganda. The ministry doesn't care. There's a program we have to deliver. So we have to get creative about how we do it. So it's been an interesting time. It's still a challenge. We're not even in the office 100%, all of us were on a rotational basis. So yeah, we've had to get creative. It has definitely affected us, but we've taken the challenge on, and yeah, we will not be defeated.
And on that note as well, there's a couple of other questions that have come in on COVID. One is from Stan Weir, who's another of our current pupils, who has asked what effect coronavirus has had on the economy of Uganda and in general. And the other question is from Deborah Warren-Smith, who has asked, are you able to talk specifically on the effects of COVID on, I think, especially women and children and other vulnerable populations?
Let me start with that last question. Absolutely. A lot of people have had to be back home. And unfortunately, being at home for some women, for some adolescents, for young people, has meant an increase in domestic violence, an increase in gender-based violence, an increase in teenage pregnancy. I mean, the stats are not looking great, to be honest with you. And this is why there was a massive debate about opening up schools, because a lot of people think that sometimes the children are safer in school, but then school has its own issues as well. So for sure, there's been, I mean, the stats are there. We can't deny them. There's been an increase in a lot of these areas. And I don't think we're unique in that area. I think there are many countries, definitely on domestic violence issues, that we're seeing an increase in those areas, unfortunately. And just also linked to the previous question, which was the effects economically. If I've lost my job, my wife has lost her job, my husband's lost his job, we have a mortgage, we have a major loan at the bank, and that are put on these families, the strain of no money coming in, the strain of not being able to feed your families, the strain of not being able to take care of your extended family. You know, in Uganda, it's not just our nuclear family. We take care of a lot of other family members, aunts, uncles, cousins, nephews, nieces, grandparents. Sometimes we all live together. Sometimes you live with your in-laws. So I mean, what we're seeing is that the socioeconomic pressures are also compounding the domestic violence issues, the teenage pregnancy issues. We're seeing a lot more child marriage, unfortunately, is going up because people are viewing their daughters as now a way of income. Like, let me get one person out, we get some money in, and then we can see what to do with these ones. School dropouts as well. What's the point in going to school? Time to go to work. Whatever small work we can find, we need to work as a family. So there's so many factors. It's such a complex problem that sometimes you do sit back and you find it hard to breathe, because you're like, where do we start? But what we can do is chip away. And certainly on the issues of socioeconomic issues, there are factors that I working for UNICEF, I have to say, no one wants to hear about healthy nutrition when they can't buy food for their families, right? So we have to be sensitive to that. If my husband is beating me up and my children every day, I'm not interested in whether I have soap in my hand washing facility. It's just, it doesn't make sense. So you have to understand the context you're working in. And then from there, see, maybe the first thing I need to be doing is helping this person. This person needs help to find a shelter, needs counseling, needs to find safety before I come in with anything else that I would like them to think about or do. So yeah, context is very important. And the pressures that come from COVID have been, and for some people have been astronomical. There's no denying that. And we're seeing it in some of the stats that come out from World Bank figures and other major reports.
I'm going to just move to, I'm conscious of time, and I know Mr. Hunter would like to wrap this up in about an hour, although we've got lots of questions here, but I'm going to ask a slightly different one now from Paul, who was a teacher when you were at school as well. He has also asked when you're going to be running Uganda or be...
No, I'm steering clear of politics, thank you.
Here's another question for you. An interesting question. English public schools are or were pre-COVID expanding in Asia. Should they be done likewise in Africa? That's very naive if one were an economist, but ...
Wow. I mean, we have some very elite public schools across the continent in different countries. Definitely they're there. There's some very good schools, and for those who can afford it, it's absolutely, that's where we go. I was lucky. My parents sent me to one of them in Kenya. It's called St. Andrew's Turi. There's so many in Nairobi and in Kenya. There's in Swaziland's a very famous one called Waterford. South Africa has St. John's, and there's so many schools. Even here in Uganda, we have King's College Budo. We have many, many schools. I think that probably now, looking at where we are with COVID, it probably wouldn't be a wise financial investment right now. Pre-COVID, I might have had a different idea, definitely, just because I know the numbers of people that are sending their children abroad, actually, to schools, not just here, but abroad in the States, Malaysia, India, China, the UK, many, many schools. So I would have said pre-COVID, possibly a good idea. Post-COVID, probably not so much, I would have thought. That's my thought for now.
And another really interesting question here from an anonymous attendee.
Okay.
A controversial question, I think.
Oh gosh, let's go.
Interested to hear that you were never told as a child that being a woman was a problem and could hold you, and so it didn't. I've heard young women of colour who are anxious about applying to university because they may be taken only because they're women of colour, or indeed they may not be taken because they're women of colour.
Because they're women of colour, yeah.
That the emphasis at the moment on being of colour is an issue. On being of colour is an issue that actually adds to the problem. Now young people of colour are learning that this could be a problem for them. A thorny one.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's true. I ask myself, if I hadn't gone to King's, right? If I wasn't captain of school, would I have got into King's College London like I did? Would I have got in? I don't know. It's not something that I think about. I don't obsess over it. I got into King's College London and I took that opportunity because it came to me. I wasn't sitting there wondering, I wonder if they chose me because I'm a person of color and looks good for their stats, and I don't know. It's possible. But I think that if I get that chance, what I do with that opportunity is the most important thing. I understand that in the time that we're in right now, this is a very different time to when I went to school. It didn't mean that those issues didn't matter at the time, but they're now being discussed. They're at the forefront. They're part of a discussion, which is extremely important. So I understand young I understand young people and young women of color who are not sure, did I get into this school because I'm good, because I have the grades, because I'm intelligent and I'm smart and the color has nothing to do with it? Or am I not getting in because of that color issue? I think that all I can do is worry about what I control in that moment, for sure. That's how I felt when I went to uni or when I left King's. I can only worry about what I can control. I doesn't mean I know that I have not experienced racism in my life. Of course I have. But the issue is, how do I react to that racist moment, that racist issue, that particular moment when something happens? What do I do with it? It's up to me to decide how I want to do with it, what I want to do with it. So I don't really have an answer. It's an important point, and it's a discussion that must be had. I agree. Too often, these what we call awkward conversations, difficult conversations, have been left to the side, and they cannot be left to the side any longer. We need to have these conversations. People are feeling left out, have been feeling left out for many, many years. But again, I have to recognize that I am coming from a position of privilege. Okay. Yes, I might be Black, I might be a person of color, but I am a privileged person. And so that factor moves me slightly away sometimes from these issues, but it doesn't mean I don't want to be part of that conversation. It doesn't mean I don't want to contribute to it. And it doesn't mean that I don't want to help and push for my people, as it were, but I can only control so much, and I can only be in charge of so much. And I believe that the way I carry myself, the values that I have, speak for themselves. If someone is a racist, they will pretty much always be a racist. There's not much I can do about that. But what I can do is, if there's a teachable moment, if there's a moment in which we can have a conversation and I can explain something to somebody so they can see it from a different perspective, and so the next time they go out, they're thinking from someone else's perspective, then I think I've already done something. That's all I can do for now, anyway.
Thank you. What a great answer. I'm just going to ask Mr. Hunter now if he'd like us to wind up now, or whether there's a couple more questions, but one more. Okay, Mr. Hunter is saying.
One more. Okay.
It's up to me.
Oh, hang on. Alana, sorry to interrupt. I saw Caroline had her hand up and then she took it down.
Yeah,
Caroline Kamana. I saw Caroline sneakily, and there she is.
So it could be the one. It could be this could be the one. Miriam has chosen her one.
Hi, Caroline.
Hi, Miriam. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, good. I have to say that it was actually Dunstan who raised the hand. He had a question, but it was very similar to Kirsten's. But before he goes in with probably another question, I just want to say that actually, although you were appointed, I'm pretty sure that we would have all voted for you as
stop it. Thank you. Hi, Dunstan.
Miriam, what a superb talk. I have to say, inspirational is the word that springs to mind. Truly a trailblazer. I mean, I was going to ask you, as I said, Caroline mentioned earlier that Kirsten sort of hijacked my question. It was going to be about, returning home, the fact that there is a large African diaspora, myself included, all over the world. What would you, I guess you've already discussed your experience of moving home, but would you encourage the diaspora to come home, or to help the continent from overseas?
I think it can work both ways, Dunstan. I mean, I'm always a big supporter of trying to encourage anybody to at least try and come home and try it if they can. Yeah, I mean, it depends on your circumstances. If you are, like, I'll take the example of, like, for instance, I have a cousin who's Ugandan and married to an American. Their life is in America. They have children in America. The kids go to school there. So it's for me to say come home doesn't work that way. But if I find somebody who's graduating, not really sure what they want to do, why don't you come home and see what chances, what opportunities there are? I'm always a big supporter to encourage people to come home. If it fits for you at that time, if you have a young family and you're already somewhere else and you're settled, no. But you can do your part from that I'm sure Dunstan, you can do your part from outside. So for supporting people back home in Zambia, I'm sure you have a whole plethora of people that you're supporting, whether it's school fees, whether it's our usual struggles. So I think it's a bit of both. I try to show people the side that it can work. It doesn't always work. I've had friends who've come back and they just struggled to fit in, and they went back to Canada, went back to America, went back to the UK, but they found a way to still support, the home, as it were, whether it's, sending money home to support kids who need school fees, who need, supporting your family members to build a house, supporting to, buy a plot of land so you can grow something as a family that you can use as income. There are so many ways you can support. And I think that's reflected in the remittances that for most of our countries, when you see the money that's sent home, that's made by people who work abroad, but they send it home, that's a major part of the money coming into Uganda. And I'm pretty sure it's the same for Zambia as well, Dunstan, and many other countries. So I think it's a bit of both. It's also about timing, and it's also about whether the opportunities that you're seeking fit with when you come back. So I think it can work both ways. It can work both ways. Thanks.
Great answer. And just one more thing, sorry, Miriam, I just wanted to say, I think we're out of time, but I just wanted to say that those areas that you said that you're working on, I was blown away. So, keep up the good work, and thank you.
Thank you very much. It's a team. It's not just me. There's many of us working on this. It's not just me, but thank you.
Miriam, thank you very much. I'm sorry to some of the pupils particularly that we haven't quite got through your. I was wondering if you might be willing, if they sent them to me, whether we could maybe have a text or an exchange by email where you might be willing to answer some of those very specific geography questions that they might be very helpful for the pupils.
That's absolutely fine, and hopefully I'll have done my homework, so I'll be able to answer those questions better. I was waiting for someone to ask me, like, what's the tallest, I don't know, mountain in Uganda or something. I don't know. I was like, oh God, no, please don't ask me those questions. But I'm kidding. No, I don't know, but I'm kidding. But sure, absolutely, that's absolutely fine. There's no problem at all, and I'll be able to give a better answer.
Those of you who've asked questions, don't worry, I'll try and retrieve them from the chat, or you can email them to me. But thank you, Miriam, so much for, as people have said, an inspirational talk. There's been lots and lots of very positive messages on the chat, just thanking you for that. And the work you're doing is incredible in Uganda. And Dunstan is right, the kind of things that you are getting involved in, the education programs, the work you're doing on young child marriage and abuse, as you say, and FGM. It's just so important, and we're so grateful to you for spending this time, especially as it's quite late your time. What is it now, 1:45 or something your time?
It's like almost midnight, 10 to midnight.
So Miriam, thank you so much from King's, and we do very much hope to welcome you back again in person sometime soon.
Thank you, and thank you to everyone for listening. And it's great to see names of people I haven't seen. I see Amelia Stewart, Millie, hi. Mrs. Pickering, I can't believe you're on the call. I'm just like, I'm having a little fangirl moment. I don't know why, but it's been great. And I appreciate everybody, even, the guys who are in King's right now. Thank you for your really insightful questions, and I will answer more. Ilana will get them to me. Thank you to everybody for listening to me. And it's been really interesting and fun. Thank you.
I just want to echo what everybody's thinking at the moment, and what Ilana said. Thank you so much, Miriam, for your leadership, for sharing your wisdom, knowledge, memories. You are the most beautiful person. You are so naturally humble and giving. And to take from an audience member's comment, your natural authenticity and profound kindness has enriched us all. Ilana as well, and Miriam, thank you so much. It's been such a wonderful last hour. You've made everyone's day with your talk and the education you've given us all. Once again, thank you. And now I'm just going to sort of switch attention to our next King's talk. Is a rescheduled talk from a week and a half ago. It's next Wednesday the 18th, and it's Pip Jurel, OKS brought in 2010, and she's taught circles on fashion. She's a former Vogue stylist and tablet editor. So we hopefully look forward to seeing you then. Once again, thank you, Ilana. Thank you, Miriam, and everybody.
Nice.
Have a really good night.
Thanks,
Greg. Oh, Greg, sorry to interrupt you, just 2 seconds, if I may. I also see that Dr. Humberston, I must say hello to, I see Dr. Humberston's on the call. If it is him, I can't believe this. So I have to just be like, wow. So, and I'm Sarah, I'm seeing all sorts of other people. This is crazy, but thank you very much, everyone. I'm really, really grateful, and I'll definitely tune into the next talk. And yeah, we'll stay in touch, Ilana and Greg as well. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
No, thank you.
Oh, thank you. That's so touching. Okay. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you.